Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Korra comic review. This is going to be my review for the 2018 Free Comic Book Day Legend of Korra comic, which is called Lost Pets. I'll get to, I suppose, after the review, a little bit of a kind of news, just I suppose my story of Free Comic Book Day and why I wasn't able to actually get the free comic myself, and why obviously this review is kind of later than maybe you'd expect me to get it, because like if I could have got the comic, because I attended Free Comic Book Day really early, I probably would have had this video up like hours ago. But thanks to Brittany on Twitter for sending me the pictures of the pages so I can do this review. So yeah, let's jump into that and then we'll get into that story. I think this is a fun, I think, better than I expected comic, in that after the preview page especially kind of came out like yesterday, I had my doubts about this book, it really kind of having any substance to it, and for the most part, like, I wouldn't say it really is overly deep, in that I would say it is the weakest of the Free Comic Book Day books that we've got so far. I think all of the other ones have something very notable to them, in that Rebound addresses the kind of Mei and Zuko relationship and is a really good lead-in to Smoke and Shadow. Shells addresses Sokka and Suki's relationship, and is also a little bit of a kind of a backstory on the Kyoshi warriors, kind of really establishing some more about them. Sisters is a cool dynamic between Toph and Ty Lee, plus getting to meet Ty Lee's sisters, which that had always, I think, tended to be the weaker of the Free Comic Book Day books, but I think this one has sort of replaced it. Not that this one is bad, as I'll get into, there's just not as much to it as even that. At least with that book, we got to meet those characters who were like an important aspect of who Ty Lee was. And then in the previous Korra Free Comic Book Day, Friends for Life, we got the Korra and Naga origin story, more kind of interaction with kind of Korra when she was younger, and it was just an important story to tell. This one wasn't an important story to tell. It feels somewhat kind of superfluous, in that, you know, you come out of this book and you're like, okay, that was a fun little Milo story. There's no real takeaway from it. But you don't expect too much from the Free Comic Book Day books because of what they are. So what actually happens in the book? Basically, you know, Tenzin and his family are helping the kind of evacuees and obviously the aftermath of Kuvira at the end of book 4. People are still displaced from their homes and kind of living in different camps and so on. So the airbenders are helping out. Iki is, Milo isn't, he's just kind of playing in the background. And she kind of goes to Korra, very frustrated with the fact that Milo isn't doing anything to help, and he's so selfish. You know, we get a little bit of a kind of sibling outburst here of just kind of her basically saying that Milo's the most selfish person she's ever met in her life. And Korra, of course, tries to resolve this by, I suppose, getting Milo to do something, and he's going to want to do something a little bit more active than just serving food to refugees. So she bigs up this mission that, like, okay, I have this mission, it's an Avatar mission, it's super important, could be dangerous, gets him invested in it, and it turns out the mission is to get back the lost pets of a lot of these evacuees who, I suppose the idea is that their pets either ran away while stuff was going on then, or they were forced to leave them behind, and they'd like to get them back now that things are beginning to settle down. The book really doesn't feature Korra all that much. She's in it at the very start to get Milo to do this, of course, and then at the very end to give him, I suppose, a little bit of praise. But the book, for the most part, is a Milo-centric story of just seeing him searching for, initially it's this cat owl that they kind of initially come across, and Milo kind of ends up chasing it. He ends up sort of scaring it away, he doesn't approach it correctly, but he eventually goes into this kind of house that's infested with spirit vines, where the cat owl is staying, and ends up encountering the whole list of animals that they've come across. They're all there. He checks it on the kind of list of pictures that he has. all of them are there. Then all of a sudden the man comes up behind him, and it's this man named Jobal, I think that's the name. I've tried. I think, if I remember correctly, that's the name. He's this firebender who, you know, looks a bit ragged. It eventually quickly comes out that he is living in his own house. He didn't leave with the evacuation, so his house is sort of infested with spirit vines. All these animals came to live in his house, and he's kind of looked after them, giving them food. He kind of mentions that he wouldn't let the government kind of force him out of his house. So that's why he's kind of in a very bad situation. He kind of should be at the refugee camp, but has purposefully stayed behind. And Milo's like, these pets actually belong to someone. And he's initially like, no, those people abandoned them. These are my pets now. I've looked after them all this time. But Milo kind of shows him the pictures, which the pictures that he has are of the owners kind of playing with their pets, showing the care and attention, that this isn't really a case of like neglect here. It is just crazy situation in the city forcing owners and pets apart. And what happens here is that the guy turns out to not really be any sort of a threat at all. He calms down, immediately knows that that's the case. But Milo says, there's a refugee camp now, you should come there, like, you need a bath, basically. And, you know, they just kind of establish this relationship. When they get back, of course, the pets are reunited with their owners and so on. The mission is a success. Korra kind of has to kind of, I suppose, she's there at the end, but basically puts all the plaudits on Milo. Iki's even somewhat kind of impressed by this, and sort of uses it against him. Like, okay, you've done something good, you now know what it means and feels like to do something good. Now do this thing, basically. It's just meant to be a little bit of a joke ending of like, okay, you've now done something, you've learned what it means to do it, now do a lot of different stuff. With the, I suppose the big kind of joke towards the end is kind of that, okay, he's helped this guy is now kind of recovering with all the other refugees, but he kind of misses having all these pets. So they bring back something really cool from book 2, which is the fact that, of course, Milo has Pokey, but he trained all of the other lemurs as well. So he just calls in a bunch of lemurs and basically says, you can have this couple of lemurs as pets. You seem to get on really well with animals. You looked after those ones. You should have pets to kind of keep you company. And it's this just really nice moment at the end of just Milo being able to do this for this this character here. So the book ends up having a pretty nice kind of emotional core right at the end. It's not amazing, but it's something. Like, if this was literally just the kind of comedic antics of Milo capturing a bunch of different animals, and there was no real like substance to what happened at the end, I don't think it would have hit as home, and I'd be a little bit more critical. The way it goes here, I think it works because they play on something from the series of the fact that because of what happened to the city, there are like refugees. A lot of people were displaced. We're still kind of recovering from that. And one of the effects that that's had is that it's displaced humans from their pets. And it's an issue that it's minor, but, you know, does need to be resolved. And it's Korra kind of taking on a more minor role as the Avatar, which we don't often see her do because she dealt with like 4 really, really big threats. So in that sense, it was a fun little thing to do. I perhaps would have liked to have seen maybe more interaction of Korra and Milo. And while I suppose Milo sort of learns a lesson, it's very much a present him in a slightly bad way, have him learn a lesson that really the character, it's not like who he was like at the start of the book really represented a major problem. Him just being a slight bit like lazy, not wanting to help out as much, didn't really represent this like fundamental issue with Milo as a character, and that he now only knows the kind of meaning of helping people out. So it doesn't really feel like a huge like character shift moment for Milo, but it's nice that at least he got a moment to sort of shine to a degree here in this comic. In that I think this comic will actually be pretty good when it's like collected in a Korra Lost Adventures and Team Avatar Tales style book, where you have this, you have Friends for Life, and a bunch of other different stories of varying importance. The problem, as I said at the start, is that it sort of stands out among all of the free comics that we have as being the sort of the least important of all of those stories. The art here is very, very good. Who's the artist's name? Jade Ait Casey, or Jade Ait Casey. I'm not really sure of the pronunciation on that, but I really, really do like the art. It's clean. It's different than, I suppose, some of the other artists that we've seen before, but it's got this this clean style that I think really works, and I think most people who I've seen react to it have actually really, really liked the art. And it's one of those things where we're sort of in the process of like, when are they going to announce who's doing the next Korra comic after Irene Coe? Is this a potential candidate, or was this just a free comic book day and done type situation? Because like is the case a lot of the time with these free comics, I'd like to see more of this artist's work on Avatar. Where will they get that opportunity? Because it tends to be they stick with one artist for the trilogies a lot of the time and just keep going with them. And then there's not a lot of opportunity for artists to do other stuff outside of the free comics. So I think that's a big success of this book. They do the animals were kind of, I think, well drawn. Milo and Korra were, I think, overall well done. Backgrounds, the colouring was really well done. I think it was Vivian Ing on colours again, who does the colours for the for Turf Wars. So in that sense, I think the creative team, Mike, I think, was the writer. The creative team, I think, was fine. It's just the book was sort of lacking in that really, truly, like, memorable, like, thing that this book is about. And that I think come, like, a couple of months' time and we're reflecting on this comic, it's not going to have the immediate, like, it was the Korra and Naga story from the last one. And that's, I think, the only real criticism to level at it. As for the, I suppose, free comic book day element of this, in that this could be someone's first Avatar or Korra comic, and the idea of the free comic book day books is for it to sort of be this kind of gateway into the other books available in the same series. Does this book work on that front? If we had a decent amount of Korra comics available, I'd say yes, but we don't, and the two books we do have available are Turf Wars Part 1 and Part 2, and I don't feel that those two books, they tonally don't feel the same as this one. And that's not really a problem for me as a Korra fan, but for like a beginner getting into the comics, they're like, Milo's the main character of this. Maybe they know the Legend of Korra show and they're like, okay, Korra's the main character, but they're focusing on Milo. Milo's not a focus of the comics, nor is most of what's happening here. It's the same time period, of course, but in terms of it really addressing the key problems, it's not really doing that. It's not an issue 0 for anything. And so because of that, it's like, this would be okay if it was leading into a very, like, fun, kind of an entertaining Korra comic, but like Turf Wars is, it's a little bit more serious. Like the stuff that we're dealing with is very, it's kind of very politics heavy in a way, of just like there's a presidential election going on, and the you know, the spirit elements and stuff like that as well, but it's all kind of gangs, seriousness stuff. It's not really emphasizing the more kind of funny aspects of Korra as much. So is it directing people towards that? Is it directing people towards the Avatar comics with the kind of comedy side of things? I'm not fully sure, because if it was directing people towards Turf Wars, I feel like Korra and Asami probably should have been in the book together, and maybe you should have done a Korra and Asami book to lead into Turf Wars, and that would have been the way to do things, to give more development to that relationship. And it's one of the things that people remember about Korra as well, so it'd be, from a marketing perspective, it would work. And this is sort of where you think about, like, did they avoid the Korra-Asami stuff because it's an all-ages book, that this is specifically marketed as one of the all-ages free comic book day books, and because of that, did they sort of stay away from the Korra-Asami angle on things, or what? So it's a sort of confusing book on that front, in terms of, like, you know, the free comic book day intent behind it. as an all ages book, I think it works. The fun of having a younger main character, learning a little bit of a lesson, a little bit of emotion, it gets across some of the aspects of Avatar, and that's good. I just don't think it's the best kind of gateway into like the like Avatar comics and stuff like that. In that, like, I look at some of the other free comics that I did get on the day, and I haven't read all of them yet, but at least the couple that I did read, they feel like you know, to a degree, gateways in terms of like, this has given me a sense of kind of what's going on currently in the comics, but that like I should probably maybe go back and catch up on some stuff to see what's going on here. So that's more or less my review of it. I liked the book. I thought like there was definitely a chance that this book would come out, I'd read it, and it would just be like, no, there wasn't really anything to this. And there's an element of that, but I think it did just enough to make me be like, okay, you know, that was solid. I enjoyed that. As for the second part of this video, Free Comic Book Day, for me, my experience, I left at like 7 in the morning. I arrived there at about like 7:45. I think I was about 20th in the queue, and by the time the store actually opened at 9, the queue was probably like 100 kind of people going backwards. So I was fairly happy with my place in the line. I knew that, okay, I'm not going to miss out on any of these comics for sure. But I knew going in, I realistically wasn't going to get the Korra comic because my local comic book store didn't list it on their list of Free Comic Book Day books that were available. They said it was because of European licensing restrictions. And then I found out afterwards when I got home that Dark Horse had actually confirmed this. They said that specifically for the UK, they don't have the international rights for Korra comics for the UK. Which to me was like a big like, and you didn't tell us until now because like the day before Free Comic Book Day you reveal this, that this book just isn't available for some reason. It helps to explain why I've had such trouble getting like Turf Wars. My copy of Turf Wars Part 1 and 2 I didn't get from my local comic book store because they never even listed either book as coming out. They always every week put out a list of books that are coming out on the following Wednesday. They never listed either Turf Wars on it, and that kind of makes sense to me now. I don't have any bookstores near me that would like get the book in on the physical, the mass market release date. So I've tended to get them from like kind of online bookstores, Book Depository primarily, which are UK based, and they have got the book. Which to me almost suggests that the problem with the UK distribution seems to be more about specifically to comic shops as opposed to just full stop the UK just doesn't get them. But again, I'm not sure specifically. I haven't tried to like buy the books digitally. Are they like region blocked if you try to buy them digitally, or is it just like a physical to comic shop type thing that they're missing the license? As well as that, because like I have the Friends for Life book, I got that in 2016. So either they had the license and it ran out, like I get the impression like last year, maybe in or around the time of Turf Wars Part 1 coming out, or something else happened here. I'm not really sure, but it was weird to just get this sudden reveal that, oh yeah, we can't sell this book in a region. We can't give this book out for free in a region for some reason. I hope they work on getting that fixed, because if it's just like a thing that's the way it is for now, that's a bit of a problem, in that obviously it means that it's so much more difficult for me to get the books as soon as they come out, because Dark Horse don't seem to want to give me review copies anymore for some reason, and this basically means I can't get at least the Korra books on a release date. The other thing this sort of reveals is that like Avatar and Korra are treated very separately as licenses almost, because I've been able to get most of the Avatar books. I think I've only had problems with one of them, and that was like The Promise Part 3 years ago. So it'll be very interesting to see when we get into like August, September, like if I'm having trouble even getting like Team Avatar Tales and stuff like that. This sort of, like that announcement sort of has me like very worried about being able to get books on the comic book store release date or not. And I suppose for Dark Horse, that is not a good thing to do with like, I suppose trying to establish like how big the UK Irish audience is. It's obviously not massive or huge, I think, compared to America, which would be the main audience. But you know, it as a region, you have to just assume like the UK is a notable like English speaking region. You know, why is the book not available here, and what are you doing to fix it? Specifically, I got these, I think it's 11 comics I got here. The main one I wanted was this one here, the Transformers Unicron issue 0. Anything else that I got was just kind of like pretty random stuff. Like I randomly got the Street Fighter comic, The Nightmare Before Christmas, the Pokemon one, James Bond, Invasion. I did pick up the Overwatch one just to see what story stuff for Overwatch is like. Miraculous Ladybug. I'm not really sure why I picked that one up. I think I just remembered that that show was a thing and just picked it up. My Hero Academia. This one's actually quite fun because like it's unusual to see like manga pages in a kind of comic form. So that's just a kind of fun little kind of gimmick. I had a quick look through the Power Rangers one, and it looks like the Power Rangers comics are actually quite interesting. They seem kind of tonally very different than the shows, and it actually makes it seem quite interesting. But yeah, I picked up a couple of books. I'll probably read them over the next few days. I did buy 2 Transformers comics, Windblade, the complete collection Windblade book, The Last City, and then Combiner Wars, which is just stuff I needed to sort of complete my IDW collection. Because again, the aim of Free Comic Book Day is that like they're trying to increase business. They still have to buy these free books, even if they're for free, they have to still buy them from the publishers. So they're hoping that the allure of free comics will increase sales enough that they kind of benefit from the day overall. So that's why I always like when I attend Free Comic Book Day, I still like to actually buy some books, and it's why like I was definitely considering not even attending once I knew the core comic wasn't going to be there, but I went just because yes, I wanted the Transformers comic, but also, like I just said, like, yeah, I want to go there. There are comics I want to buy, so I'll just buy it on this day to add to the, you know, hype of Free Comic Book Day to keep it going. But yeah, that's my thoughts on this year's free comic, Lost Pets. It's one of those ones where, like, if you did miss out on it, read it online. I don't think, like, because it's not the most like impactful book, I don't mind too much that I don't have the physical book. Of course, as a collector, I'd like to have it, but I assume it will be collected at some stage down the line. So it's a case of like, it's not the biggest kind of like book to really like freak out about if you couldn't get it. So you know, it's solid. But I think given everything else that's happened, it's not really the book we needed. I think we needed a book that had a little bit more meat to it, because it's been so long since the last Turf Wars. It's still going to be a couple of months before we get into the releases coming out. So it's just waiting for like content to actually get rolling again is a little bit frustrating. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the book. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the book if you've read it. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.